the reality is, if I spend time with Jesus, I'm going to want more of Jesus. And the same is true of sin, right? If I engage and I dabble, I'm going to start to become numb to the things that are killing me, right? Yeah. We say this, if you don't kill sin, sin will kill you.
And so I think that we live in a day and time where we have so much information available to us, and that we can just feel like experts because we know a little bit about it, but the need for our souls is to know some things very deeply.
Welcome to Let's Talk About That, the podcast where we take a deeper dive into Sunday's message and explore any questions you might have. I'm your host, AJ Stevens, joined by lead pastor Chip Parker, and I'm thrilled to be on this journey with you. Whether you're a longtime member of the Orchard or a first-time visitor, Let's Talk About That is your space to explore, reflect, and connect. Join us as we navigate the intricacies of faith, spirituality, and daily life, seeking to understand how the wisdom shared on Sundays can be applied to our modern challenges. So, grab a cup of coffee, find a comfortable space, and let's dive in together. This is Let's Talk About That, where the conversation about Sunday's message never stops.
Well, good morning, or good afternoon, or good night, or whenever you decide to listen to this. I don't know. I know we record it generally in the morning, so for us, it's good morning today. It's good morning-ish because it's almost noon at this point with just everything going on. I want you guys to know as you listen this morning, you got two guys on here who are dragging a bit.
less than 100%.
Yeah, you got one guy who's pretty nasally.
Yeah, you got the congestion going on. So I'm curious though, is part of the reason that you're dragging that you're getting old?
Yeah.
Because the day that we're recording this, not the day you're listening to this, but the day we're recording this is a milestone for AJ over here, sitting across from me. AJ, how are you spending your birthday today?
You want to hear something actually really funny? So this is so on brand for my life, but we're spending my birthday, hung out with the kids this morning, got to love on them, hang out with them, came here to record this, get an oil change, get a tire rotation, got some other stuff I need to do.
Like, is that code for you got to make some doctor's visits, or like literally?
No, like not on me, not changing my oil.
No, I was just
changing my car's oil. And then because I am the way that I am, and I just don't think that far ahead, we scheduled dinner with some friends tonight, just like casually.
Let's go hang out. That's on brand for AJ.
Yeah, and then this morning I woke up and Kay's like, hey, do you realize you scheduled dinner on your birthday? And I was like, not until right now.
Well, so here's the question. How old are you today, AJ?
29 again.
Again?
30. This is it, baby. We're getting old. Stuff's cramping and hurting and joints are aching.
What age did you start making sounds when you sat down and got back up?
23. 20. I feel like for me, it was the minute I stopped taking care of my body, right? Like diligently and deliberately. College athlete, right? You kind of have to be in the weight room and you have to go run and you have to do all this stuff. I never enjoyed that.
So only the psychos enjoyed that.
Yeah, true.
To be clear.
And the guys that are getting paid to still do it.
But they're not enjoying it. They're just getting paid to do it.
Yeah, but maybe they're getting paid to do it because they enjoyed it.
Or they're a psycho.
Anyway. Or those two things aren't mutually exclusive.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But it was like a year and a half after that. After that, the muscular atrophy, I think, started to set in. Got a little bit heavier. A good 220 turned into a bad 220 as muscle and fat transitioned, and it was just all downhill.
See, one of the things that they don't prepare you for if you play athletics, even in high school, but especially through college and beyond, is that when you stop, your eating habits have to change quickly.
Yeah.
Because, even when I was playing semi-college baseball, right, because we were terrible, but man, you just ate all day. You shoveled food. You were just trying to get as much, as many calories as you could. It's not great when you're sitting behind a desk most of the day. And instead of working out or throwing or whatever, you're reading.
Yep, 100%.
Not as good of a move.
Which is why this past year, the beginning of this year, I should say, after everybody got done with their New Year's resolution, because I need the gym to wind down a little bit, right?
I need the gym to wind down.
About February-ish, I said, all right, AJ, it's time. It's time to go do the thing you've been putting off for way too long. And it's time to go get back some of the guy you left back when you were 23.
All right, so here's the question. When's the last time you've been to the gym?
So I took turkey season off. Pretty hard, the whole month of February, month of March. Turkey season guy here, and I said, all right, well, I can't be double dipping, right? I mean, that's just crazy. That's too much.
Everybody gets one thing. Nobody gets everything.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. So I should have gone back. Should have gone back last week. Should have gone back this week. but it's my birthday, and I ain't trying to do all that on my birthday. You know what I mean?
Well, happy birthday, Alex.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's good. It's good. So what about you, Chip? I want to hear when you started going downhill and started moaning when you stood up and all that good stuff.
I'm not sure I was ever uphill, to be clear. Never been super athletic. You know, I played baseball in college, non-scholarship, and it wasn't because I was an athlete. It's because I could throw things, and I could throw them where I wanted them.
To the average person, that's not going to make a lot of sense, but to anybody who's not a pitcher only, they're like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, I remember the first time, AJ, you were at the office and you wanted to go out in the parking lot and throw.
Yeah.
Just the first thing out of your mouth was like, oh, you got pretty good arm action there.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not terrible at baseball. I'm just not an athlete.
I didn't see it coming. I was impressed. I thought you were going to tell them the story about you punching me out with the blitz ball.
No, we'll save that for another day.
Because we had a season of blitz ball.
We'll save that for another day. But I feel like I started making noises sitting up and or getting up and sitting down probably about 37. But in fairness, you got a lot further to go to get down and up than I do.
Touche. I do. How about this, though? So you got the physical ailments that come with this. What about your mind? Do you feel like at 37 your mind has gotten sharper or duller?
Well, I'm 39.
39, sorry.
37 is just when it started.
Yeah.
I've been here for a minute.
39. Some of you are like, there's no way Chip's 39. That guy's got to be 64, right? You hear that all the time.
We're moving past that.
All right, keep moving.
But I don't know. I don't think that I have suffered any mental decline, so to speak. I think that I've always had a terrible memory. That's nothing that's ever started. I'm a little bit scattered. One may say, Chip, are you ADHD? No, I don't think so. I think I'm just one of those really like scattered random people. But, who knows?
That's good. Well, we're going to put that to the test real quick because what we're going to be unpacking, talking about a little bit today is not necessarily a message, because if you were at church at your location Sunday, you realize it was a standalone message or maybe a mini series from your location pastor. And so today, you and I are going to walk back through and maybe highlight some of the things that have stood out to us from past series.
Yeah.
And that's going to require some memory. That's going to require some straining that mental muscle.
Which is a little sketch, but okay.
So here's what we're going to do to get you warmed up, Chip.
Okay.
We're going to get you warmed up with a little game. And we played a version of this game at student ministry a couple weeks ago. But
oh, no.
Here's the game. And you don't have to, get up and act out. Obviously, we're not on camera. We're just doing the recording. But I'm going to say a word, and then you have to repeat back to me the word. Okay?
Okay.
Then I will say another word.
Okay.
And you have to repeat back to me the previous word and that word.
Oh, phenomenal.
Then I will say another word, and you have to repeat it. So
we just keep going.
So we're going to see. I have 12 on this list.
Well, we're not going that far.
Let's see if we can get through 12 because they're pretty random. They're pretty off the wall. I'm making sure he's not cheating on his little iPad there. So you got the integrity of the
I really did just look at the iPad, and I was like, I wonder if I could just edit, but I'm not.
What if I just did that? So here we go. You ready?
I guess.
The first one will stick out a little bit for you, but we'll dive right in. The first word is zinc.
Zinc.
The second word is remove.
Zinc, remove.
The third word is name.
Zinc, remove, name.
The fourth word is sisters.
Zinc, remove, name, sisters.
And then we'll take a little break to let that muscle kind of deflex, and then we'll give you the fifth word, which is wax.
Zinc, remove, name, sisters, wax.
The sixth word, I should have vetted this list in light of last week.
Yeah, fair enough.
But here's the sixth word, uncovered.
Zinc, remove, name, sisters, wax, uncovered.
Good. Number 7, chase.
Zinc, remove, name, sisters, wax, uncovered, sisters.
Sisters twice?
Yeah.
Dang,
wow, that snuck up on me.
The chase was the next
Chase.
one.
That snuck up on me.
7 out of 12, which is oddly enough. So the way
that snuck up on me. That was interesting because I was feeling really confident until I heard it come out of my mouth.
You were cruising. You were rolling. Do you want another shot at number 8 and see how it goes?
Let me see if I can get 7.
All
Zinc, remove, sisters, uncovered. Nope, see, I'm already gone.
Okay, that's good. You did pretty good. I'm not going to lie.
Zinc, remove, uncovered, sisters, wax, chase. No, there was one in there. See, that's crazy. That's crazy.
It's not easy. The way this worked in student ministry was they had 2 people on your team who would hold a poll, right? And you had the third person who was in charge of remembering the instructions, and the teammates were not allowed to help them, but you had to tell them over, and they would step over the pole. Then they would have to go reset, and then you would say under, and they had to go over and then under. And it was pretty impressive watching the students get through it. And And oddly enough, the average number, I think the winner got 8, but the average number was 7 for the students doing all that. So I don't know what it is about that little 7 to 8 sweet spot. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. You know what it immediately reminds me of? And I don't know, you may be too young for this. It's like left, right, up, down,
Yeah.
A B start or something.
yes.
Yes.
Come on.
We're not gonna explain that, because if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't.
I'm trying to think of the, and I can't, but there was on the original Game Boy, it was just called Game Shark, right? It was Game Shark. Yeah, you could plug in this, there's this little game that would go in the back of your Game Boy called a Game Shark, and it would give you cheat codes to every game they had out there.
Every game.
It was incredible, right? It was the reason I was able to have an infinite number of rare candies on my Pokemon.
I just had to look it up. It was the code was actually up, down, left, right, B, A, start.
And what was that unlocking specifically?
That's Mario, 30 lives.
Mario, 30 lives.
30 lives.
Daggum. I just used this is my 30th life right here.
Wow.
This is funny.
Look at that.
One of my friends texted me this morning. I want to read you what I replied to them with, but they said, "Happy birthday, AJ." And I was like, man, thanks. That's awesome. It's honestly an honor to have made it to 30 with my personality and such little give a crap factor on so many adventures throughout my life. So
I'm going to be honest. I don't know that everybody saw it coming. So congratulations.
If you're my parents, you got to be pretty stoked about making it this point. It's pretty awesome. So that's good. Well, all right. So let's do this. Let's dive in a little bit to maybe some of these past sermon series.
Okay.
I don't know if there's one in particular that you love. I know we've had some that we've been asked about, but I think as we go back and remember, it's good to do this. And you mentioned this before we ever hopped on here, and so maybe you can speak to it a little bit. But sometimes we just go. And if we're going, and we're sitting in front of the content and we're breaking down the content and we're trying to get to know the content intimately, then we know that you are going too, and you're not sitting with the content that long. You're sitting with it for an hour on Sunday.
Well, in church world, we call it the tyranny of Sunday, and that's that Sunday is always coming. And when Sunday comes, there's a new set list for worship, there's new children's curriculum, there's a new message. And when we're done with this series, then there's a new series that's coming. We're starting a new series this Sunday. And I think because of that, it's really easy just to sit in the message from that Sunday and then dump it, maybe even before Monday hits, but definitely before the next week hits. And then before too long, we have all of this content that we've consumed, but how much difference has it made in our life? Because sometimes, and AJ, I know that this is a wholly unfamiliar concept to you, but hey, the newest thing is the most important thing in the moment, right?
For sure.
We like to pick at AJ. AJ and I are both very similar in that regards. Whatever the newest thing is what we want to deal with.
This is so funny. Real quick. We were at Kiwanis Kids Day, Saturday. I took Dax over. I see myself and my son so much as he grows up, right? And I take him over to the bow and arrows, and I'm like, this will be fun. He'll do this. And there's a guy with him. And, the guys are sitting with these kids, and they're like letting them shoot 7, 8 arrows. And Dax gets the first one, and he kind of doesn't let go on time, and the arrow kind of just, flops out of the bow, and the guy's explaining to him. He's like, okay, I got it. So he goes, and he does, and he smokes the target. He's like, all right, let's go do the next thing.
Yeah, 100%. Next thing.
Daniel, but it was funny. I sent Daniel our group chat the video, and Daniel goes, if that's not you, I don't know what else is. All right, well, I figured it out. Let's go do the next thing.
Absolutely. And, there are those like us who are inclined to that personality, but that's also how the world works.
It is.
Right? Like, whatever is on your TikTok algorithm today, it's probably not going to be the same thing next Monday, because it's going to be a whole new thing that's, the it thing. And so I think that is detrimental to our spiritual formation in a lot of ways, because we don't need to know a little bit about a lot of things. We need to know some things very deeply. Mm-hmm. And that is why, AJ, from our end, we really try to, maybe build series that connect to each other, build off of each other. I think that's why I love the last series that we just did, Prodigal, because we took 3 weeks and dealt with one parable.
Yeah.
And it was the same lesson over and over. And so there's that tension between, hey, we don't want to be redundant Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, but also sometimes it takes more than one strike of the hammer to drive that nail. So I think it is important to kind of sit back and look back on where we've been, what we've learned, what lessons we took from it.
Yeah.
Because it's not enough that we enjoyed the series,
100%.
right? What did we take from it? What difference do we see in our lives today because of that? So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I think this will be really good for us, hopefully good for all of you who are listening, and maybe even, put a little itch in your brain to go back and maybe re-listen to some of those things.
Yeah. So 2 things that we say all the time. One, we say to you and we say to ourselves, we value life transformation over more information, right? And so if this whole thing has become informational and sermons are informational and the content in small groups is informational.
Or even just emotional. Hey, I felt good this Sunday.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great distinction too. Maybe a little more difficult to see at first, but over the course of 6 months, it's easier to see, right? But we say that we value life transformation, and so we want to sit with some of this stuff for a little bit longer. And then the other thing that we say to each other is about the time we're sick of saying it is when you finally
start to hear it. That's right. That is 100% right.
There's that tension. And I also think, to your point real quick before we dive into this, that what our culture is doing right now is it's feeding us so many little bits of information all of the time.
Oh, yeah.
That we're almost conditioned to like, okay, take it for a second, leave it. Take it for a second, leave it. I can scroll to the next thing in 15 seconds. My brain is starting to do that. And you see attention spans have shrunk over the last decade and all kinds of stuff. And so
I heard somebody say this, I thought was spot on. They said, we are drowning in information and thirsting for knowledge.
Man, okay, so that I think that would be a phenomenal thing to just real quick unpack to make clear the distinguishing factors you were talking about.
We live in a day and time where we have access to more content than anyone has ever had. I mean, it is stupid the amount of information that is accessible just on our fingertips. We were, AJ, at the Orange Conference a while back, and they were talking about preaching and being live fact-checked by students they were preaching to. And then one of the last messages we heard in the conference, you, me, Matt, Lucas, we're fact-checking the message. And I'm not sure that they're right about that, you know, because the information is there, but information is not the same thing as knowledge. Right? Like I can know this is a hammer, this is a nail, this is a 2x4, doesn't mean I can make a cabinet,
Amen.
And so I think that we live in a day and time where we have so much information available to us and that we can just feel like experts because we know a little bit about it. But the need for our souls is to know some things very deeply and very fully and to have a true knowledge of that. And so I think that's what I mean. We're drowning in information, but we're still thirsting for knowledge.
Yeah, which makes it tough because sometimes we lead ourselves to become under the impression that we've retained it and we can move on to the next thing. And really, we shouldn't. Really, sometimes we should go sit with a sermon series for a little bit. Or we
need to marinate.
Marinate, right?
That's my word. I hadn't used it as much lately. That used to be my word all the time. Let's just marinate for a minute.
Like a darn hind quarter in your favorite marinade. You just let it sit there.
I was going to say New York strip, but okay.
Yeah. One of my dad's golden rules is don't ever season a steak or marinate a steak. If you need to do that, then you're not good at cooking a steak. So I'm not allowed to personally include steak.
I understand that. I don't mind him being wrong. Love you, Alex.
He's an S&P guy, man. Salt and pepper, throw it on the grill.
Hey, now I will say one of my favorites is to marinate a steak with salt and pepper and olive oil. Sea salt, cracked pepper, and olive oil. But that's just me. We're derailing so hard.
It's good. I know in this part of the world, we have some steak experts, right? It's for sure. If you have never done olive oil, you need to do it. I like to personally add some time to mine, not time on the grill. In fact, I like less time on mine, THYME on mine with that. But yeah, anyway, that was for free. So as we start to look back through some of these sermon series, are there some, maybe for you, here I go again, are there any that stick out to you? By the way, that's my oil change ringing and telling me that
you're done.
That stick out, that you would say, man, I think this is one that we could do once a year, or one that we should really sit with more often, or one that I think was really impactful for maybe you personally, or would be really impactful for our people, anything like that.
Well, I think the one that is a yes and a yes, it is one that we keep hearing about over and over, and one that was extremely personal for me, even though I didn't talk about it much at the time, is the series Scars on the Soul. Like, that was a very important series. I think it was a very timely series in our church. We looked at anxiety, depression, addiction. We looked at it from the standpoint of being medicated for some of that versus how much of it is a spiritual condition. And I think we had some really good biblical conversations around that, and it was brought back full force this week. I don't know if AJ, you saw this on the screen. John MacArthur, man, I have learned so much from MacArthur over the years. He's been a really solid Bible teacher, but I'm not certain that there's just not an age where you need to have people who need to say, hey, you might not need to be on a live microphone right now, because the man legitimately said PTSD, ADHD, and OCD are not real. They don't exist. They're, and just, there was some more context to it, but essentially the idea is that if you were just a better Christian, you wouldn't have issues with any of that. I think that's so wrong. That is so wrong. That's, and looking back at that series, that's not what the Bible teaches. And, quite honestly, why that series was so impactful for me is that I was in a season where I was dealing with a lot of depression, and even to the point where it was diagnosed, depression. And that was me searching the scriptures. Okay, what is this? What does this look like? Is this because, there's sin in my life that I need to get cleaned up? Is it because I'm not reading my Bible enough or praying? What is all this going on? And not unpacking the entire series, but the idea is that, yes, some of this is chemical imbalances, whether it be anxiety, addiction, depression, and some of it is spiritual. There's not a clean line in between the two, but that there is grace to meet all of that, whether it's common grace that comes from physician, or common grace that comes from sunshine and exercise, or special grace that comes from the word and worship and, just going through that. So that was a really impactful series for me. I studied a lot, I read it a lot, and it was really encouraging to see that help a lot of people, I think. And AJ, you can speak to this because you and I actually got text throughout the series from someone in particular who was sharing these messages with her colleagues, and we got some pretty cool feedback. You want to go into that?
First, I would say that is such a important thing, I think, for us to understand. And you said something there that I don't want to jump past. You said, this was me searching the scriptures to figure out what this is. And there's so many directions you can run when you're trying to find answers in life. And I think the starting point is so important. And so I love that you said that. It was subtle, but I think it's something that needs to be super clear. God's word speaks to every facet of life, right? And it shouldn't be lost on us. You're a spiritual being, right, in a human body. And so the answers from the sovereign God who made you in his image are littered throughout the text, whether it's through examples of other people like we looked at in that series, like guys like Elijah who were struggling with depression, or whether or not it's an actual remedy from something in Proverbs or Psalms where the author is saying, hey, here's how you wrestle with and deal with some of this stuff. And so I just think that's huge. I don't want to skip past that. But yeah, the situation you're particularly talking about isn't coming to mind. But
so we have, I thought you'd remember that because it was interesting. And you kept mentioning it too, because we have a licensed therapist that attends the Lake City location, and they were leaning into the series, very anxious about how we would handle this, because churches oftentimes say what MacArthur said, right? And the therapist said, I really like how you guys have handled this, so much so that I have shared it with this, I don't know the right word, coalition of therapists that I belong to, and on this Facebook group of therapists that I belong to, and shared with us a lot of the feedback that they received out of that. And I don't know, it was encouraging because it wasn't full-on affirmation of, everything they said is absolutely correct, but the acknowledgement that I appreciate the way that your church is handling this from a faith-based perspective, and yet not completely discounting any of the medical issues behind it.
Yeah, because they're all real. And so here's what I would say is that was true of her. And the reason we're doing this is, one, so that you guys, the individual, you, Chip.
I'm very frustrated with you right now.
Right. What?
I worked very hard not to say her, and you immediately said her.
No, dang. My bad.
I think it's fine. We still have a name next.
Yeah, that's true. But what's so cool about that to me is we want to get it right. And we want to get it right, one, because we think Jesus wants us to get it right. Let me be clear. Two, because we think Jesus wants you to experience freedom from those things, right? Whatever that looks like. I don't think Jesus wants us to waller in these issues that are present and we deal with them. I think he wants more for you than you probably want for you. And he knows what that looks like. And so I think he wants freedom. And then I think the third reason it's so important for us to not just have those conversations, but to teach that kind of stuff from the stage and to walk into some of that stuff from the stage is because your scope of influence is way broader than ours, right? If we go and we have these conversations and we counsel, right? If let's say you get one person a week that you walk through these things, we get 52 people a year.
Yeah.
We broaden the scope and we realize, man, our locations are running 200 to 300 people. What if you stepped in this conversation because you had a handle on it, and now our scope broadens immensely. And so I just think there's so many reasons that's valuable, so many reasons it's important for us to lean into.
And maybe we'll have, just real quick, a mini nerd out section. I think that what you just hit on is something that I heard in seminary that didn't really make a lot of sense until later on in life. And what the professor said is that the pulpit, and we don't have a pulpit, but what he meant is the preaching. The pulpit, the preaching on Sunday morning is the primary means of discipleship for your church. And we don't use the word discipleship anymore. We'd say spiritual formation, but it's the same thing, right? We're saying the same thing. And it took me a while to get that because AJ, I think, you excel at having these spiritual formation conversations in one-on-one settings or even in small groups. And that's never been a huge strength of mine. I think it's something that every believer's called to, so I lean into it. It's just not something I find myself naturally gifted at. I like to think of myself more as coach than discipler. But man, you just said, if we do that with 52 people, one a week for a year, let's just say even three. Let's say 3 people a week for a year, and we have 106 people that we are doing. You have the people that you're doing that with all year long. And then to think that on Easter Sunday, we had 1,700 people sitting in our churches listening to the message. That's why these series are so important to us. And that's why we put so much work into them. And that's why, because we put so much work in, we feel they're so important that it's good to go back and remember them, that because it is that preaching that is the primary driver of spiritual formation in our churches.
Absolutely.
So, what about you? What's a series that you look back on and kind of was a big deal for you?
Man, I think I personally love all of them. I think one of my favorite ones, and it's evidenced by the fact that I just revisited it in my first Location Pastor Sunday of the last 2, was the I Am series. Because I think, for me, it's so important to understand who Jesus is. And I don't know if it's the season of my life that I'm in and what I'm surrounded by, but right now, the sore thumb complex for me is people who see Jesus as a good figure but don't necessarily understand who he is fully. And so, I don't know. I also am partial to just series about Jesus, right? I loved our Questions from Jesus series. I pitched another one around that same idea for the next year. I just love that. And so for me, the I Am series was so good because it's Jesus himself saying, hey, I want to remove any ambiguity. I don't want you to hear it from a third party per se. Not that there's anything wrong with that, right? But I want you to hear it from me. This is who I am. And if this is who I am, here's what I give. And so as we walked through the I Am series, I think it was just so cool, so encouraging, because we got to look at what Jesus had to say and some of the things that he alludes to. And so I gotta say that was one of my favorite graphics.
Yeah, so ever. I loved it. Go ahead. Sorry. What out of the I Am series do you remember? One of the I Am statements stuck with you? Just one of the things that we talked about?
Yeah. Well, obviously, you can go back and listen to it online because that's the message I preached this past week. But the vine dresser, right? Like I am the vine, you are the branches, and so Jesus saying, I am the source of all that, and then the door and the good shepherd was so impactful.
Yeah, that was really interesting, right? Because we talked about the thief who comes in to steal, kill, and destroy, and we always talk about the thief is the devil.
Right.
And as we dug into that, it's like, it's not saying that the devil does it, but that's not who Jesus was talking about there.
Yeah, and I can't unhear that now because every time I hear somebody say the thief is the devil, and I'm like,
well, actually,
I'm not going to wade into that, but he does bring us abundant life, and so, which is the other one, like the bread of life. I'm the bread of life. He is the one that brings us life and nourishment, and he is the one that satisfies a hungry soul. And I think in our culture, we don't believe that, right? And we kind of alluded to this, but everybody's telling you, no, you're the answer. You just have to work harder. You have to go get the life you want. You got to make it. And here's Jesus saying, hey, you can scratch and you can claw and you can do all of this, but you will never truly be fulfilled until you understand I am the bread of life. And so I think the reason this series for me was so cool is because you see such a broad scope from Jesus on, here's what I want to do for you, from I want you to have a better life, John 10:10, all the way to I want you to have eternal life. You know what I mean? And so I think in a culture where everybody's trying to find their own answers and the right answers, that series really just said, no, let me show you who holds the keys to all the right answers and what your soul really needs. So I don't know. That's probably the reason I love the I Am series the most.
That's good. That's good.
Out of the last couple.
Any series for you that, and it maybe wasn't even the series as a whole, but just like a nugget, a thought, a big idea, takeaway, an application from any of these series that has kind of stuck with you?
Yeah.
Since?
So this one's not going to be on here on our last 365 days. It's further back. Which, by the way, maybe pause for a second and tell them you can go back and look at these series if you want. I think you can go back a year on our website, and if you go on Facebook, there's no timeline for how far you can go back. It's all documented there. Yeah. So if you really want to scroll through our Facebook videos, you can go back and find a lot of these series.
Yeah, and I would say if there is a particular series that you remember that you can't find, drop us a contact on the website, and we will do our best to point you in the right direction with that.
Yeah, absolutely. But the one I would be referring to, the one that was a lot of fun for me personally, I think, was the We Believe series. And
oh, yeah, like UF, baby.
Right, yeah. Gosh, you mean Sodom and Gomorrah.
Easy.
But also go Gators. Come on, let's go. But it was cool because what we did for that series, if you haven't been with us that long, I'm trying to look and see just how far back that one was. But in the We Believe series, it was October 6, 2022. We went to Gainesville, and we got on a college campus, and we said, all right, what do people actually believe? Like, what do people who don't sit in our chairs on Sunday believe? What do they think? And
yeah,
as a person who probably in another life is a sociologist and just loves to watch people and study people and figure out why do you tick, and
it's not nothing to do with sociology, AJ. You're 7, or big old 7, you know, big old 7.
I just want to know.
I need to do an Enneagram podcast one day.
Yeah,
big old 7.
Enneagram's also the devil and not from God. That's what I read on Facebook one time. So the We Believe was us going down there and interviewing, and you can find these interviews. We put them in the bumper. That was our bumper for the series. But just asking these college students, hey, what do you believe about God? Well, what do you believe about the Bible? Well, what do you believe about, higher power in general? Well, what do you believe about the person of Jesus? And in listening to all these answers, it was eye-opening. Let me say this. Lostness is not as far away as you think it is.
Negative.
Right.
It's never as far away as you think.
And so I think, one, that was almost encouraging and exciting for me in a way, because also maybe of who I am. Like, and I have a friend who tells me, it's like, sometimes when people realize they're lost, you get really excited. I know, I love it. Like that's step 1, and then the solution is step 2.
Hard to get found until you're lost.
That's right. And so for this, it was like, man, this is life-giving in a way, because you're seeing just how big the mission field is, discouraging maybe in some ways, because you realize that's not your home and you don't have an impact.
And there were some surprising answers to questions we got based on what we knew about the people who were answering them, and even some contradictions there. But yeah, I remember that series well. That was fun to really look at what we believe and even why we believe it. I think for me, this it's just one statement from this series that sticks in my head. We did a series actually almost a year ago to the date called Pass It On, and it was about passing faith down to the next generation. And we just had a statement in there, and I've used it a ton since, but I don't think I'm ever going to lose it. It said, we don't want to be a cool church. We want to be a warm church. And I just love that, because to me, that's what I really, truly feel about the Orchard. And because we have lights and drums and wear jeans and we're contemporary church, whatever that means. Yeah. I think sometimes people are like, oh, they're a cool church. They're a cool church. Number one, come to one staff meeting and you will never again say that the Orchard is a cool church. Yeah. Anybody who has gotten to know me would be like, no, there's no way that guy could ever pastor a cool church.
Not true, Chip.
We don't want
to. We love you. You're a cool guy.
I'm wearing a pickleball team T-shirt right now as we're recording the podcast.
Figures behind you.
You're wearing a shirt that says "Catching Ducks" with a cool duck. Whatever. But my point is that we are not a cool church.
Gosh,
we do want to be. Oh my gosh.
Go ahead. Sorry.
We do want to be a warm church, right? Which is when the next generation comes into our church. They feel seen, they feel loved, they feel empowered. And I don't think I'm ever going to lose that. Don't be a cool church, be a warm church. That was a big deal for me.
Can I tell you one that I think I liked, maybe because it stepped on toes? And we're not supposed to like these probably. We're supposed to know that they're pointed, but we're probably not supposed to like them for this reason. But I think I liked our Excuses series a lot. And Matt did that series together.
Yeah.
I like that series a lot because I think we relate with that so much, right? And I relate to that. I mean, maybe not just in my spiritual life, but in every aspect of my life, right? We start to to rub up against the tension of, okay, well, I have a plausible reason for why I'm not doing that.
Plausible reason. How many times when we're doing that series did we say, is that an excuse?
Yeah, is that it becomes like sore thumb complex. You're like, man, I'm doing it right now. I'm doing it. And so I really like that series because it's so easy to neglect every other series that we go through. It's so easy to neglect every other principle and spiritual discipline that we talk about under the guise of, well, I have a plausible reason. And you can have a million plausible reasons. That doesn't make it okay. It doesn't
well,
mean
at least plausible to you.
Yeah, sure.
And that's one thing that we talked about too. But I get you. I think that really was a pretty impactful series. And like you said, Matt really spearheaded the charge putting that together for us and did a really good job with it.
Yeah. What about one that you maybe didn't like? You were like, how about this? Let me ask you this way.
Okay.
What's one that you think, I'm not really excited about this, but you saw the return on investment from? You're like, dang, okay, that was way more impactful. I'm kind of putting you on the spot there, but you're like, I didn't think this one was going to go great. I thought it was going to be a flop.
All right. So true story. I was not super excited about the Seasons of the Soul series.
Okay.
Like, I thought it was a good idea.
Right.
And I like the interesting aspect of the different seasons of life. But I was just wondering, what are we really going to get from this series? And don't hear me say, like, I didn't want to do the series, advocate against it. It was just, man, when there's so much that you feel needs to be talked about and taught on, you get picky.
Mm-hmm.
But the more we got into the series, like, I was getting fired up to preach those messages because I was like, oh man, this is so good. And the more I dug into it, the more I'm like, yeah, that's right. You got to work in the spring, baby, because if you're waiting until harvest time to work, it's too late, and that even, I think for me, the winter season, about how, there's a time for endings. We have to have time for endings.
Yeah.
That was really helpful. So, yeah, I think that was one that I wasn't super excited to get to, but after we were in it and then past it, I was like, I'm really glad that we did it.
Especially because, here's why I appreciated that series. I say this all the time. Life is all about cycles. Like, you're going to get yourself in a cycle in life, and life is going to throw you into a cycle. And one of the things specifically that I talk about with life and cycles is there are the spiritual righteousness cycles, and then there are these sin cycles. And what I mean by that is you see things in passages like Psalm 37:4, where it says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Well, if I delight myself in Jesus, what am I going to desire? I'm going to desire more Jesus. And so there's this cycle that gets set in motion when I posture myself toward God. And the opposition is going to try to hijack that cycle. Your own flesh is going to try to hijack that cycle. And there's going to be everything trying to throw you off that cycle. But the reality is, if I spend time with Jesus, I'm going to want more of Jesus. And the same is true of sin, right? If I engage and I dabble, I'm going to start to become numb to the things that are killing me, right? Yeah. We say this, if you don't kill sin, sin will kill you. It's a cycle. It's these cycles that we get on.
That came from our sensitive series.
It did, yeah. And one of the things I love about the season series is it helped us, I think, put a handle on, like, okay, I can identify the cycle. I can put an end to the cycle, or I can embrace the cycle. And I can understand that this is not something malicious. This is just what life looks like right now. And I've got to know where I'm at in the cycle so I know how to step into the next thing, or I know how to combat this. And so, man, that was a great... If you're in a season right now where you feel like everything's hectic and you don't know what's going on, and you would just like, you can't wait for the next thing to happen because this season's terrible, go back and listen to the season series.
I think that's good.
I think it'd be super helpful.
That's good. You mentioned the sensitive series, right? That if we're not killing sin, sin's killing us. I think that's a good example. Just kind of pull back the curtain for everybody a little bit. That was never what that series was supposed to be.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot.
You remember that?
Yeah,
So when we started ideating that series and really kind of dreaming about what that series would look like, it was looking at specific sins that maybe fly under the radar sometimes, or that we don't like to talk about. But as we dug into it and really started to flesh it out, it became, instead of really looking at these individual sins, and we did a little bit of that in the series, picking out some individual sins as examples, but we need a fuller theology of sin. Like, we just really don't understand sin and what sin is. And so that's a pull back the curtain about how sometimes these series even morph as we get ready for them.
Yeah, and I think that's the beautiful part about listening, being sensitive to the Spirit. God, here's what we want to do. What do you want to do? You know what I mean? Because those two things don't always add up until we ask. And so I think that was a great example of that. Like, all right, God, here's the direction you want to take your church in.
Yeah.
And maybe it wasn't even the initial thought. And so, I don't know, that's cool when that stuff happens.
We'll do this. What are some series or a series? And you did kind of throw it back a little bit already with the We Believe. But what's a series, like, if you were to, like, go way back, like, give us a blast from the past. What's a series that you're thinking? I see you scrolling there.
Yeah.
Going back and looking.
Let me let this thing load for a second as I'm looking. Do you have one? Oh, yeah, for sure I have one. Wait a minute. What am I talking about?
Okay.
I don't even need to look. It's not even that far back, but it was probably my favorite series we've ever done. Again, because of Jesus, but it's questions from Jesus.
Oh, yeah. You were all about questions from Jesus.
Man.
That was a good one.
Favorite series, because Jesus, I saw this the other day and I can't remember what it was, but he asks X amount of questions. It might even be in that document, but he asks X amount of questions and it's a big number and he only answers. Okay, here it is. In the 4 Gospels, Jesus is recorded asking over 300 different questions. Now, as you keep going, just a question that Jesus was more than 40 times as likely to ask a question as answer one directly. He was 20 times as likely to offer an indirect answer as a direct one. And so here's a guy who asked a pile of questions to get us thinking, but only answered a couple, and sometimes would do your classic answer a question with another thought. And I just think there's so much value there from him as we dive into these questions because they're pointed. And they know the heart of man, and they know he's asking them for a reason. He knows what we're struggling with, and so I just love that.
That's good.
I love that.
That's good. I do remember you were all over that series and we're doing it.
I would go do it again right now. Forget the question, Chip. Why are we doing it again? Go.
I know.
What do you got?
So I got a couple. Number one is, I don't know if you remember, we did our First Peter series.
Yes,
walked through First Peter, or at least part of First Peter. Man, that's just one of my favorite passages for the church today to dig in, and so I'll always go that one. But some series I had fun with, and I don't even remember if you were here for one of them. You were definitely here, AJ, when we did. Do you remember Humble Brag?
Humble Brag, because that was another thing.
That was the thing that never ended. We saw Humble Brags everywhere.
Yeah.
And then, were you here when we did 7 Digital Sins?
I had come on just after that, I believe.
Yeah.
Right before that, I should say.
Yeah, so 7 Digital Sins. That was a fun series.
Okay, so I'm going to confess here on the podcast with you. But that was in the hiring process. You said, hey, why don't you go ahead and catch up? And we're in this series called 7 Digital Sins. Why don't you go back and watch those? And I was like, yeah, okay. I never watched them. But I went back to watch them later on. And yeah, that was a really
It was fun. Just kind of, stuff that we deal with today that you didn't always have to deal with. But those were 2 fun series I remember doing.
Yeah.
So I tell you what I really like. I would like to hear from you guys. You're listening to this now. So obviously you are invested at least somewhat in the Orchard and the series that we go through. So I would love to hear from you series that have been impactful to you. And so here's what we're going to do. And I'm pulling pastor privilege right here.
Love it.
We make a post every week when the episode drops, or most every week when the episode drops, and we'll make a post this week when it drops. And so if you're listening to this, go back to that post and comment your favorite series from the Orchard, one that you remember, okay? Your favorite series, and then just a real quick snippet of why, and AJ and I will randomly pick a winner to receive a little swag bag from the Orchard for dropping your favorite series and why it was your favorite series.
I like that. That's a good idea. And that'll be fun. I think it'll be cool to see how the church is impacted and how God's been able to work in people's lives over that. We have, again, dozens of listeners. And so maybe we'll catch some
Your
people
odds are pretty good.
Maybe we'll catch some people who haven't come in a while. Because as I was at Kiwanis Kids Day, there were some people there who I'd never met before. That's it. I was like, hey, we would love to kind of give you some information on what we do. And, oh, no, I go to the Orchard. Like, okay.
Yeah. Did I ever tell you the story about when I was in Mayo? I was talking to a couple, and I was asking them where they go to church. And they were saying, we go to Airline Baptist Church, and that's where our pastor. That's like, really? It's like, do you remember the pastor's name? Who's the pastor there? And they legit mentioned a guy who had pastored there like in the late 80s.
Wow.
Maybe early 90s, but it had been a hot minute. And I was like, well, do I tell them I'm the pastor there? And I chickened out. I didn't tell them I was the pastor there. I told them, we'd love to have you, I'd love to see you one Sunday or whatever. But anyway, it happens. It happens.
That's funny.
All right. Well, you got anything else for us today? I know this wasn't the longest episode, but it was fun to kind of go back and think through some of these things.
Yeah, I've just been dying to say this one too. One of my favorite lines was from our Unstuck series. And it was, that series is all about the Red Sea getting Israel out of Egypt. But one of the things that stuck with me, and has really stuck with me through every series we've done, including Jonah and Nineveh and all that.
I know what you're going to say.
They got out of Egypt, but they hadn't got the Egypt out of them yet.
Yeah.
Man,
I've heard you say that a couple times.
Yeah, just a phenomenal reminder that God's still working on us, and we still got some things we need to let go of.
Yeah,
so.
It's good. Well, let us hear from you guys. We do want to hear your favorites, what has been impactful, and we're kicking off a new series this Sunday, Lessons from Her, Mother's Day.
I said this from stage Sunday, and I want to be super clear. This is lessons from her, men, not lessons for her, okay? So from her, for you and her, but from her, not for
her. In fairness, it is lessons for all of us from some very godly women in Scripture.
Yeah, it'll be good. I'm excited about that.
It's good. All right. Well, glad you guys were here. AJ, happy birthday. Thanks. 30 looks good on you, big guy.
Yeah. If you need my address for gifts or whatever, just shoot me a DM. I'll help you out.
Yep. Love it.
All right, see you guys later.
See ya.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Let's Talk About That. We hope it encouraged and challenged you as we continue to grow in this journey of faith and embrace community. If you have more questions, thoughts, or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us through our social media channels or visit our website and stay connected. Your questions are what make this podcast a dynamic and enriching experience. If you found today's discussion meaningful, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Your engagement helps us spread the message and connect with others who may find value in these conversations. Until next time, we hope this episode inspired you and will help you bring Sunday's message into your week ahead. Keep the conversation alive, and remember, we're all on this journey together.